Yo, what is up, guys? This is my second YouTube video. I'm pretty pumped for this one because it's kind of more approaching, like the personal side of things, what I've experienced and what I've learned. Just running, the business, just getting into the online coaching space, and not just that, but also just being in college and just managing the time of just education. Learning the importance of academics, and then also learning the importance of entrepreneurship, mixing both in together. And here's the three, big things that I want to talk about and what I've learned on my journey, with this online coaching stuff and just overall being an entrepreneur while mixing it in with, college stuff as well. And those three things is time management, right? Number one. And then number two, consistency, right? This is very important. And then number three, patience, right? So combining all those three, these are the, three main things that I've, personally learned from myself and that I'm, trying to apply along the journey just to help myself and just also, scaling for other fitness coaches, right? Because our niche, we help fitness guys scale up to 10K per month with their business. And if you overall, apply patience, consistency, and time management, these are the three biggest things that, anyone with a, a hungry mindset just to, get more money, this can definitely impact your business for long term. So I think the first thing that I want to, touch base on is definitely time management. And the reason why is that when I went into, college, and then as I, met Gabriel, right, we just had like, a lunch, I believe, and then we just kind of just, clicked from there, right? We just kind of wanted to, make more money on the side and just kind of like figure out, besides just school, besides just academics, how we can, help our family, in the meantime as we're, going to classes and stuff like that. Because obviously for school, you don't get paid. So, you don't get paid that much. And then we were just, two hungry guys just wanting to make more money somehow, right? So, with the online space, we just got into the mentorship. I remember, it was Gabriel, he more so just took the jump, and I just kind of went in with it, just kind of, I just wanted to, support the business as much as I can. But then just kind of like, referring back to what I said about time management, it's all about, because I feel like everyone, they make the excuse of, I don't have time to study. I don't have time, to go out to, get a workout in because I'm so busy with, finals. I'm so busy with all these exams, just, cramming into my schedule all at once, right? I'm so busy with so much homework, right? So many people make so many excuses, but then, for me and Gabriel, we couldn't make those excuses at all for us, right? Being entrepreneurs and then also being full-time students, this is not an easy thing to do, right? And this is the biggest thing that I've learned down the road, especially, in the previous semester where I was going back and forth, and I'm a commuter too. I don't stay in the dorms. I commute to school, and it's just kind of, time can get hectic when, you don't manage your time, on a consistent basis, but then not just consistently, like efficiently, effectively as well. So for many of you fitness coaches, right, you might be, considering, to run a business, right? But then also you might have, some other side things going on, right? Some family events, some things going on maybe with school, because most of you are young entrepreneurs looking to, make more money, right? Somehow besides just, going to school full time, right? And I get it, because being Gabriel, we've both been in that spot where it felt like school was just kind of taking up all of our time. But if you manage your time efficiently, right? Because I know Gabriel personally, he has a schedule where he just literally plans out 7 days per week of what he's gonna do. And I remember like, there's like a certain time where he just does a certain thing, and then a certain time, where he just does a certain thing, another certain thing, right? And he's so like spot on with everything, right? He's always, communicative, always just spot on about, every new thing that's just in the way, right? Because he wants to put it out in the schedule just to see, what he has to, plan in his head, so that he can prepare ahead of time. And for me, I didn't really have that going into the business, but then I kind of learned down the road that it's very important to, really schedule your time. And then especially just having a partner where, he's doing it. So having that influence on the side for me, I feel like it definitely impacted me down the road just to see the importance of time management. So just stemming off of that, time management, obviously, the number one thing that I feel like anyone, any entrepreneur out there can apply into the business just to see, how much they can progress over time, right? Because I know with the mentorship, there's group calls that we have, per week. So, you just kind of have to schedule things out just to see what works out best for your schedule and just see what best works out, for the time that you want, with your parents, with your family, with your friends. It's all balancing things out. But yeah, just like kind of flowing to the next big thing, consistency, right? This is the second thing that I mentioned that I've learned for myself. Consistency does, there's a bunch of stuff like that happened in the past that just kind of made me realize how important consistency is, right? So when it comes to entrepreneurship, I feel like the value that you get, right, over time, let's say if you, sign up with a mentor, for me personally, I'm with a mentor, like I said before, there's so much value just being dropped down on you, right? You definitely have the knowledge, you definitely have the skill set, to achieve, not to achieve, but just to, you have the knowledge and skill set, like planted inside your head, and you have the capability and the potential to scale up to 10K or scale up to even further, just knowing, how much you have in your head that you can just definitely apply, when it comes to real life and stuff like that. And I feel like, just having that knowledge, just having the skill set of what it takes to run a business fully, it just kind of helped me. The only thing that was missing really was the consistency part, because I feel like with school, this is why time management is very important. So for most of you full-time students, you must be, kind of setting yourself back because of classes. And then when it comes to final exams, because I remember, me and Gabriel, when it came to like midterm exam, when it came to important deadlines, for school, for homeworks and stuff like that, I feel like our consistency with the business just kind of fell off, right? We were, in the zone where we were just going like this, and then all of a sudden we just kind of dropped down because, we forgot the importance of consistency, and then we just wanted to go back up, right? But then the only reason why it's kind of a problem when you go, when there's a time where you just kind of going straight head on and then you just kind of drop down into nothing, right? And then you just kind of go back up. There's no consistency, because consistency is supposed to look like this, where you're just going straight, across, right? Because having like when you definitely hear like so much successful people just talking about how important it is to stay consistent, right? Every day, even small progress daily can make a big difference over time, right? Versus, having such big progress in one day or even like 1 week, and then the next week after, you literally do nothing, right? And I remember me and Gabe, we talked about it, and then we were just kind of talking about how sometimes we're going so much into the business where, we're going like crazy, we're skyrocketing, but then we're putting so much of our energy and then we're putting so much of our time and commitment into it that it just drops down into nothing later on, right? But just kind of balancing things out, we're just, kind of like this, right? We're just steady, calm, and it's not so much where we're just, putting all of our effort and then we're just kind of exhausting ourselves, into one thing over time, but then just kind of dropping down, right? It makes so much of a difference, because this is kind of what I learned also when I was young. I was playing basketball. I used to play for like a basketball team, and then I remember when I practiced, right? I just wanted to get so much better, but then I would just put all my exhaustion into one thing like this, just kind of, shooting every day, and then just kind of like just practicing, but like I was burning myself out, right? Because when it comes to burnout, later on, you're just gonna go down. You're just gonna end up doing nothing, right? Because during that time, if you kept yourself steady and calm, you're gonna make more progress daily, right? Versus when you're skyrocketing and then you just kind of jump down to nothing, right? But if you kind of fill in, during that time where you're doing nothing into something, that's gonna help you make so much progress, even if the progress is kind of barely anything, right? Because something is always better than nothing. And last but not least, I want to talk about patience, right? Because patience is another, key thing, for yourself to have as an entrepreneur. It's a discipline, it's the mentality side of things, right? And when it comes to patience, I feel like, from when it was, when we were in school, right? For me personally, I remember, sometimes I would rush into things, thinking about wanting to make so much money, very quickly, but then I kind of forgot, the importance of, staying consistent, just kind of keeping things steady and calm, right? Rather than just skyrocketing, just kind of rushing into things where if you don't make anything, right, if you don't have any results coming in, then you just kind of, put yourself in a slump, right? You're kind of setting yourself up for failure, right? If you're expecting so much things, in a quick, in a very small amount of time. But the whole game plan with entrepreneurship is that you're looking at make, the best out of yourself, the best for the business for the long term, right? This is a long-term game plan, right? So it's all about patience, right? It's not about rushing into things. And there's a lot of stories, on Instagram, on social media, just in general, where people are making, tons of money in a month, even a couple weeks, right? And I feel like, sometimes, that's even crazier to think, because I feel like that kind of influence you in a bad way, where you're now putting yourself in a position where you're comparing to those people out there that are making quick money, right? But then for anyone out there, right, in this circle of entrepreneurship, for any of you entrepreneurs out there looking to get into the game and help yourself, make so much money for the long term, the key is patience. But the whole thing with, starting a business and just kind of, running it for the long term, the long-term purpose, it's all about the process itself, right? There's this, phrase that I go by, just trust the process.